name's Kim, and you're watching Kim Wilson TV. My channel is dedicated to helping victims of narcissistic abuse escape and go on to have wonderfully successful lives. I too am a victim of narcissistic abuse, and there's a very big difference between your partner being, very simply just an asshole and being a narcissist. Now, I was dealing with a covert narcissist, so a lot of undercurrent, in the relationship. For example, when the relationship first started, there I was, very much in love, very happy, buying plants and picking draperies, and here's, Captain Crazy over there, who's actually plotting against you, developing an agenda, an evil agenda. So, the realization that I was out shopping for draperies while he was plotting an evil agenda was very difficult to understand in the early stages of my realization what was happening, and really coming to discover that I was dealing with someone with a severe mental disorder, and the condition of narcissistic personality disorder is very frightening and very heartbreaking situation initially for me. I guess I had gone to a point in the relationship where I had become so battered and so abused and so manipulated and so controlled and so hurt that I was in that crazy cycle of, what more can I do? How can I try harder? How can I be a better person? There was no combination of words I could, put together and present to this horrible person, how much I love them, how much I want to try harder. And it was absolute Stockholm syndrome. And I think for all of us, you need to realize that the narcissist, the covert narcissist, will become worse with therapy. They will become much worse with age. So, I had to start to really look at this situation and say, wait a minute, I'm dealing with an excessively cruel, mean, heartless, middle-aged man who's only getting worse from here. That was just inconceivable to me. Yet you've got those heartstrings attached to the situation. I think, for all of us, when we've invested ourselves in someone, in something like a relationship, especially if you believe this is a loving relationship with a future, it's really, really hard to cut and sever those ties. And I really had to pull myself back in and really take a look at what I wanted in life. And absolutely, I did not want to spend my life in pain, accommodating someone to love me at all. Now, initially, when I realized something was wrong, and I will admit that from the early onset during the love bombing stage, I had already seen red flags. So as my research started to progress, I come across a video called, 50 Signs That You May Be Dealing with a Narcissist. In the beginning of the video, it explains that if your partner has 10 of these symptoms, they could be a narcissist. Well, my God, all 50, I mean, absolutely all 50 in spades. And this horror, this sense of doom started building in me. The reality is this. I'm sure you love your narc. I love my narc very much. I'm sure you've tried, and I'm sure you've sucked up a mountain of bullshit too, just as I did. But the reality is that unless you are willing to sell out and cash in your life and the essence of who you are to accommodate this madman who has no capacity whatsoever to love you, you absolutely have to leave. And I see so many videos kind of teaching people coping skills. Well, I didn't want to cope. I really wanted to be alive. And I do believe that there is a wonderful man out there for me who isn't going to crap all over me on a daily basis. And I know there is for you too. And I think you really just have to come to the realization that there's nothing here. And you have to leave. Even if there's children involved, especially if there's children involved, you really have to leave. They have no more capacity to love their own children than they do you or their mothers. You're completely wasting your time, and it's never going to end well. irony and real sadness in being involved with a narcissist. In my case, I love my narc very much. I mean, I truly love my narc. And had my narc just left me alone, I would have stayed very happily, very content being a good partner and, a good homemaker and really, wanting to be a good partner to him. But he just kept meddling in it. And the one-upmanship that a narcissist displays, I mean, they just have to be better at you than everything. And, that affected my career. It affected my sense of self. It affected my relationships with my children. It isolated me. It was destroying my life, and life as I knew it had really ceased to exist. And the reality that I had to leave was the first step to getting out. And I think that's where we all have to start, is we have to really internalize what's happening. This is bad. It's only getting worse. And you really have to leave. I wish there was another answer. But your swift, safe departure is your best bet for having a quality life and never getting in a real relationship with a real man. The early steps that I took in educating myself, really were the first step to getting out. That was really it. And the fact that you're here at YouTube looking for answers and looking for help, is probably going to be the first step for you too. Now, one of the things that really helped me to determine that it needed to end once and for all, I wasn't going to become part of a, down the road regurgitated, narcissistic harem. That was not happening for me. The early realization was, first of all, my narc had no capacity to love me. Period. So I had accepted there was never going to be exchange of love. If I left, he was never going to miss me. I would be totally discarded and replaced immediately. And that just felt so lame and shallow to me that, it was never happening. And the other thing is there was no relationship to leave. What it was in was very, very far from a relationship. So it eliminated that sort of feeling that I was leaving something I had invested in. Certainly I had invested in it, but there was simply nothing there. A point where I'd realized that I served absolutely no purpose in my narc's life aside from, personal, emotional sort of extraction. I was absolutely narcissistic supply with no other value in his life whatsoever. And though I was primary supply, he didn't even see that as important enough as not to replace me immediately with secondary supply. And now my narc cheated continuously throughout the entire relationship. He did that largely through constant contact, through text messages and emails and things like that with his narc harem, because for him, he was very, very sick and he needed very, very much to ensure those channels were open. Now, the irony of his narc harem is that had he not had the narc harem, he wouldn't have needed the narc harem. I would have been perfectly happy there, but it was his continuous need for the narc harem that ultimately led him to need that narc harem. Now, one of the big mistakes I made, during the real heightened level of insanity where he was just gaslighting nonstop and, you got to go, you got to stay, you got to go, thanks, dinner was great, God, you're a horrible cook. I mean, this constant thing, how old I was, how ugly, how wrinkled, how incompetent, how stupid, I couldn't do anything right. So, I'd become really quite broken down from that. And, once I decided I was leaving and recognized there was no love, he was never going to miss me, I was going to be immediately discarded and replaced, and there was no relationship there. I started to be able to put together an exit strategy. Now, the first step of the exit strategy was pulling all that in emotionally and really realizing what it was. But the second one was I'd rented a storage unit. like $70, $80 a month, but it gave me this incredible freedom where I could start to, in a very covert and quiet sort of way, without tipping the apple cart, start getting my stuff out. And it made me feel really empowered, and really made me feel like I was doing something, to get myself out of there. Now, the next step to me really planning my exit strategy was I started reaching out to people. Now, this is something my narc did not want to happen, because my narc had me absolutely sufficiently brainwashed that I was horrible, ugly, unworthy of love, couldn't do anything right, and was generally just a complete piece of shit, and lucky to have had him. Now, when I started reaching out to people, I start getting all this feedback, really conflicting information. People are telling me, you're beautiful, you're creative, you're intelligent, you're kind, and very worthy. Well, this was, real conflicting information. I resigned myself to the fact that I was just horrible and useless. It was really, really beneficial to me to reach out and start connecting with real human beings who have the capacity to make human connections. I found that really, really calmed my soul and gave me a strong foundation. So if there is someone in your life who can help counter all that abuse, I strongly suggest you connect with this person or people. Now, the one thing I know for sure is, no matter what, if my narc was to be rewired, reborn, was able to get well, I'm done. I'm absolutely done. We need to look at this, internalize this, and see this for what it really is and call it what it is. This is a horrendous level of abuse. This is a very self-sabotaging, exercise when we agree to stay in this. And I think if you can start to really internalize what's happened to you, start to get your stuff out safely. If you've got a brother or sister or a good friend, start getting your stuff into their basement, and connect, like really, really connect with a human. And it'll get you moving in the right direction and see your way clear. For me, I know I'm done, absolutely done. I would have to really question my sanity if I was to ever even consider putting myself back in that shitstorm. It was horrible. And, looking at it now, I just think, thank God I had the good insight to get out of there. It was horrible.